preacher and you get asked to preach, then usually you kind of stick. John 3:16 is a good one to stick to, or you can always just go into those, the Great Commission or the Great Commandments, and so that's kind of where I'm going to be living here today, and just going to read really quick, just the Great Commission. I know we all know it. FYI, if you are 40-something and you get a new Bible, you should probably have gotten the large print edition. I didn't. All right. So where are we here? Therefore, go and make disciples of all nations, baptizing them in the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit, and teaching them to obey everything I've commanded you. And surely I'm with you always to the very end of the age. Amen. So really, that's our goal at Kettleston, is to make disciples. And the first stage of that often is leading young people and adults to Christ and having them make commitments, but making disciples. And so that concept's not lost. You're thinking, you need to come all the way from Musha. Tell us that, Cam. But how do we do this? What is the methodology? How do we make this happen? And ultimately, I think it's how do we make this happen, not just at camp, not just in our camp ministry, but how do we make this happen in the real world? And so really what I want to do is have a conversation about what kind of our objective, one of the real crux of what we do at Kettleston is really about authentic community. And creating authentic community both with our staff and with our people that come to camp. And we use that authentic community in order to create disciples, to make disciples, to become disciples and to continue to help other people become disciples. And so that's really what I want to chat with you about a little bit. There's a sense actually when I'm here that it's like, I sense a little bit, I'm kind of preaching to the choir a little bit here, in the sense that I think that's one of the things that we sense when we come here to Assiniboia is there's some real authentic community going on here and happening here. And it's on display here in your service, and I get the sense of that's occurring in your community. So if this is not an instruction for you, hopefully maybe it's even an encouragement, but hopefully there's some instruction in there too for us all that we can take home. But if nothing else, I hope it's an encouragement for you to keep doing what you're doing. Keep doing what I sense that you're doing here. And so, with that, I'll get into it. Somehow my notes got mixed up, so there we go. Growing up in Saskatchewan, kind of every boy's dream and desire, it's not to be Monty Johnson. Every boy's dream and desire is to make it to the NHL. How many of us young guys, when the first thing, what do you want to do with your life? You're 5 years old, I'm playing in the NHL. My son Seth, that's what he was 3 years old, he's playing in the NHL. For the first century Jewish boy, the goal was to be a rabbi. That was their goal, that was their dream. Because they were the most esteemed person in their culture. In fact, rabbi means great. The word rabbi means great. It means teacher, but actually great. It's synonym for great. And that's what they wanted to do. The process for becoming a rabbi was rather interesting. They would start school. They would start school at the age of 4 or 5 or 6. Actually, they call it Bet Sefer. And they would study. And then if they were the top pupils, and after that, after they hit about age 9 or 10 or so, the best of the best, would continue on to the next stage of schooling. And if you weren't the best of the best, then you went home and you probably learned your father's trade, or your father's trade, or took on the business of your family. And so, then that stage, though, there'd be another stage, and they would actually, at that point in time, they continue to memorize Scripture, and by the time they were 14 years old, those students probably had the entire Old Testament memorized verbatim. And again, at that point in time, kind of a bit of a cooling off period, and they would, they'd take the best of the best, and they'd move on, or they'd send you home, and you were done, and you were rejected. And so at that point in time, the rabbis would come, and they would begin to test and interview. This is the third stage. They begin to test and interview these young men. And they would ask them, how many times in Leviticus is this word talked about? Is this word in there? They would have to just off of memory do that. And they would ask them these questions. And at the end of it, when that rabbi had deemed this person worthy, and one of the tests that they would deem them worthy on was whether or not this pupil, and they referred to it as their yoke, could spread their yoke. And we often, I struggle with this word a little bit. We usually think of it in terms of an oxen yoke and pulling a load. You know, my burden is easy, my yoke is light. Not the same kind of concept. It's a different concept. Can he spread? Each rabbi had their own little unique, their unique teaching style, or their unique teachings, or the unique interpretations of Scripture. And they would test these individuals and would deem that this person, this young man, was able to take their yoke and spread it. I think this guy can take my yoke and spread it. He can take what I'm throwing down and carry it around to other people. And they'd only usually choose one, maybe two pupils. That would be it. So after this testing period, what the question that they would ask these young men would be, come, follow me. And those are the magic words that you wanted to hear as a young person in these studies. You wanted to hear this rabbi say to you, come, follow me. And if you heard those words, you were accepted, you belonged, you probably said yes, because that's what you've wanted to do all your life, and you went and do that. It's interesting, those words. We hear those words. They're familiar to us. We fast forward into the New Testament, to Matthew, and you have Jesus now saying these words. We hear him saying these words to the disciples. Meeting Peter and Andrew on the shores and saying, come, follow me. We don't often understand the context of that. We didn't get it, but those words were significant to those two individuals. I want to come back to that in a minute. So, one of the things, I guess, when disciples began to follow Jesus, or the rabbi rather, Jesus, but the rabbi, is they often, the quote was, may the dust of your rabbi be upon you. And that meant, really what that meant was, you were walking so closely with the rabbi that his dust fell. You were so close to that individual that the dust off his feet was getting on you. That's how close you are. Because they understood it more than just as someone who knows what the teacher knows and knows what the teachings are, but it was a far deeper. And it was somebody who wanted to be like the rabbi and do what the rabbi does. And so again, the goal of my sermon here is to not talk about discipleship or to get into all the discipleship or our need for disciples. I think we understand that. If you're here, you get that. I'll come back to this. But again, there's a couple interesting things here about Jesus. When he met with Peter and Andrew, he began to bring in these disciples. What I want to look at is the process by which he made these disciples. How did he do this? What method did he do this? And it's interesting that Jesus had 12 men. And he took these 12 men, and they lived together, and they walked together for an extended period of time. And it really is, if you look at it, it's Jesus used this group, this community of people, a small group, a small community of people, to really continue to teach discipleship, make disciples of these 12 guys. There's a really interesting point here. It can have its own sermon, but it's really interesting who Jesus chose to be his disciples. Because they weren't people that were in, I think, the third stage of Beth Midras. They had been rejected. They might have been rejected at the first stage. Maybe they even dropped out halfway through that. I don't know. But they were fishing. They were lawyers. They were doing other things. They weren't the accepted ones. So it'd be similar to right now that Mike Babcock would come along to me and say, "Hey Cam, why don't you come play for us this year?" Right? It actually is that ridiculous who Jesus took. And so if you think about that in terms of your own life, if you feel terribly underqualified, if you feel rejected or unaccepted or cast aside, that's exactly who Jesus used. to spread his yoke. And it's really remarkable. It should be encouraging to us all. I know it's encouraging to me, the last kid picked for the dodgeball team. I want us to remember this term, though. May the dust of your rabbi be upon you. I want us to think of that in a few minutes. Let's not forget that. And I said before, and you look at the life of Jesus and his disciples, and you look at this process, there isn't a greater yoke that needed to have been spread. You know, all these other rabbis, and they determined they had these, you know, their thoughts on Scripture and their intentions of what they thought should get spread around. None of it really compared to this message that Jesus had. And so how did he equip these men to spread this word? What did he do? And I also think he did a number of things, but I think that the tool that he used most was he created community with them. And we need to do, and that's what we need to do. That's what Kettleson, that's what we try and do, and that's, I think, what the local church ought to be doing. Why? Why is this important? Why is this valuable? First off, I want to point out that I think maybe it's something you already do know, but if you haven't tweaked onto this, I think it's a crucial truth that I think we do often overlook. God created us for relationship. We are relational beings. We are created for that. Look at Christ himself. Look at God himself. God himself, the Trinity, the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. It's a relationship. There's already a relationship. I don't understand it. Don't ask me to explain it. But God is in relationship with himself. There's a relationship there. We are made in his image, and we are created for relationships. We crave relationship. I work in an industry. I've talked about police. I've talked about being a police officer. And a long time ago, I kind of realized I deal with the nests, I call them. And I've recognized that most of the issues that I deal with this is a number of years ago I started saying this, guys at work thought it was funny. And I said, it's the nests. And guys said, what are you talking about, the nests? And I said, well, drunkenness, loneliness, and the third one I won't say in church, but it rhymes with corniness. And these three things are usually the root of most of the things that I deal with as a police officer. But I've realized that actually, for the most part, those three things, everybody's thinking, what's wrong with that? I shouldn't have said it. But the other two things really boil back down to loneliness. Time and time again, most things that I deal with as a police officer, most things that people who work in the social justice areas of life, it's loneliness. And people do with what appears to be strange and weird things because of loneliness. They do things that are harmful to themselves. Women stay in abusive relationships because the alternative is to be alone. And so, even those of you know, or maybe it's you who say, no, I don't need anybody, I'm tired of people, I've rejected people, I don't need anybody. Ultimately, that's just it's not out of a desire to be alone that's intrinsic in you, that isn't intrinsic in you. It's really out of hurt and pain that other people have caused. And it's really about you rejecting that which is here, this desire to have a relationship with others. And ultimately, desire to have a relationship with Jesus. We crave it. And we crave it because we're built that way. We were made for it. Right back to Adam. You need a mate. You need to be in a relationship. Right? And Adam already had a relationship with Jesus, with God. That relationship was already there. And he recognized that there was still the relationship that he was built for. God had made him that way. And God's made you that way. You look at Genesis 3 and you look at the consequences of our sin. The The consequences of our sin are solely delve into our relationships. There are no others. You think about all of sin's consequences, it has to do with relationships. Relationship with God was broken. Relationship with each other was broken. The next chapter over, we got brothers killing brothers. Right? Relationship with the earth. Right? A couple weeks, maybe days if you're the Johnsons, you're going to be out seeding. Right? There's a lot of work that's going into there that didn't used to be there before the fall. God says, hey, it's going to be hard to sow the land. It's going to be toil and effort. The relationship with the earth has been affected. I say this to remind us that relationships are hard. And yet, this is the thing that God is wanting to use in order to help us to become His disciples. You think of it in terms of even a real life. I think for the most part, you think of most of your stresses and strains and frustrations and things that make you anxious, it probably boils down to a relationship that you have that's not working. Sin's affected relationships. Relationships with each other are an integral part of our relationship with God. We see this in Matthew 22. And I don't know if did I have that slide? Sorry, I don't know if I did. Yeah. So Matthew 22, 37. We start there. Teacher, which is the greatest commandment in the law? So they're asking him. I can't remember who's asking him in this thing, but it's always funny how the disciples are always asking about greatest. I don't know what their fixation on greatest was. Which of us is the greatest, and all those things. But teacher, which is the greatest commandment in the law? Just want to stop there for a second. It's interesting. They asked him what is the greatest commandment. It's an answer for which we think there should be a singular answer. Joan, who is your favorite son? Travis. Singular answer. Right?
We're going to have another offering.
In my job, I couldn't resist, it's all right. In my job, in my role, I ask people a lot of questions. I'm constantly, often, just informally or sometimes very formally, through interrogation process or interview process, I'm asking people questions. And so I'm very careful to listen to their answers. Right? So, hey, Johnny, where were you Friday night? And he says, I don't remember, but I didn't hit that guy. So, right? So I pay attention. There's something, there's an answer there that doesn't fit the question. And parents will give you a clue, like when you're talking with your kids, usually when you ask a question and you get a question back, right? That's a clue, right? Okay, so questions get answered with answers, not other questions. So, all right, so we pay attention to those things. We need to pay attention here, because they ask him for the greatest. It's a superlative word. It's one. But Jesus gives us more. It says, love the Lord your God with all your heart, all your soul, and all your mind. This is the first and greatest commandment. And he doesn't stop. He keeps talking. And the second is like it. Love your neighbors as yourself. All the laws and the prophets hang on these two commandments. I love the Message's version of verse 40. It says, these two commandments are pegs. Everything in God's law and prophets hang from them. And I just have this image. I like the Message sometimes. It just creates a neat image. I just imagine these pegs that are made of stone, and they're firm, and they're immovable, and all of the laws are just hanging off of them, like coats. But it's interesting. Let's go back here that we know, hey, what's the greatest commandment? It's not hard to fathom. It's love God with all your heart and soul and mind. Yeah, that's, not rocket science, right? That would seem to make sense if you understood God and Scripture. But then he tacks this other thing on. He gives us some more. He gives us a more of an answer to this question. We should be paying attention to this. It's a clue. It's a hint. Okay? next second is like it. Love your neighbor as yourself. It's interesting, he also doesn't just give two. He doesn't say, there are two. It's not Joan, who's your favorite son? And she says, well, Travis and Monty. Right? It's not just two. He actually draws a parallel between these two. He doesn't say there's another great commandment. He actually says there's another great commandment, and it's like the first one. There's some equality here with these two. And so we need to pay attention to that. What does that mean? And ultimately, what we learn from this, what we ought to learn from this, is that loving others, there's this equation, it's equal to loving God. That these two things actually aren't separable. You can't separate them. He does it. He doesn't make this distinction that somehow there's this loving God, and over here there's this loving others. That these things are linked. Loving God is loving others. Loving others is loving God. And we need to pay attention to this. It leads us into, why does he use this community? What is it about us being together that he needs and uses in order to make us disciples? This isn't up there, but I'm going to fast forward to 1 Corinthians 13. Most of you know it's a love chapter. It's talking about what love is. We just finished talking about here, loving others, loving God. Let's just bring about this context of what love is. Love is patient. Love is kind. It does not envy. It does not boast. It is not proud. It is not rude. It is not self-seeking. It is not easily angered. It keeps no records of wrongs. It doesn't delight in evil. It rejoices in the truth. It always protects, trusts, hopes, perseveres. It's love. This is what love does. This is very similar to what we see in the fruits of the Spirit. It's almost a mirror. We talk about this fruit of the Spirit in Galatians. It's pretty well the same in love and patience and all these things. It's almost a mirror verse. And we know that from the verse talking about, we are the vine, I am the vine, you are the branches. It talks about producing fruit. It's producing the fruit of the Spirit. This love. And so how are these things connected? So when we think about about our lives and about how our lives are transformed, and we think about love and all these things, this fruit of the Spirit, that my life needs to be producing fruit. And these fruit is love and patience and kindness and all of these things that we see here as we talk about love. How does that bear up? How does that work? How does that work when we're by ourselves? Because I'll be honest, I have no problem with patience. I am incredibly patient with myself. As soon as we add other people into the equation, I really struggle. I really struggle to bear fruit. Seth's going, yeah, I know. Seth's my son. He's nodding his head. I think he said an amen. These things, kindness, boastfulness, not being rude. I am never rude to myself. Ever. I am always terribly patient. I don't self-seeking. I don't become easily angered. I don't keep records of my own wrongs. I know that. This fruit of the Spirit, these things, this love that's born out of love, these are things that are supposed to be experienced with one another. These are things that as I grow and as I test myself, as I produce fruit with other people, how do these things work? It's only in a context of community and other believers that this occurs. And so that's why Jesus does it. He had a bunch of knuckleheads. He did. We talked about it already. He had guys that were rejected from the process already. He had brothers on the same team. No one does that. That's a bad idea. You put some of the Lewis boys in the same board or team or group, Nothing's going to get done. It's going to be chaos. You don't do that. They did some really dumb things, these guys. But out of that, they learned about these fruits of the Spirit, this love and kindness and patience with one another. And Jesus, he used this. We see the story of again, the book, and I mentioned it earlier, that they come to us and they say, Jesus, which one of us is the greatest? I didn't know they actually did this twice. Like the first time you think they clue in that, hey, this was a silly question to ask. Because they didn't get the answer they wanted. I guess they came back later. But the first time they're actually arguing. They didn't just come ask Jesus, they're actually arguing about it. Could you imagine these 12 guys around a table arguing about who's the greatest? Like, what a ridiculous conversation. It's probably one that we've had, though. So, in Jesus, it says that he senses what they were talking about. And so then he grabs a child. He says, whoever can make themselves like one of these is the greatest in my kingdom. And he used this sense of community, their brokenness, their failures, their stupidity, and he comes down into that situation and he speaks into their lives, and he uses that time to do that. All right. I'm doing all right. All right. I want to talk a little bit about, I talked about authentic community, this authentic community, and this doing life together. And this is really where I think real discipleship making is occurring. I want to talk a little bit about what this isn't, and often what we think it ought to be. And I want to say it isn't. This isn't perfect. Right? This is like, it seems so foolish that when we think about these 12 guys, or 11 in the end, I guess, these are the guys that Jesus said, hey, go do this. Go spread my word. Go spread my yoke. And let's be clear, they did a pretty good job. It's worked pretty well. But it wouldn't be a system that we would come up with, right? We would pick better people. We would pick more famous people. People with more skill and ability. We would come up with some great scheme. Some great marketing format. And we would do this. He didn't. Right? So it's not perfect. And neither should we think that our church, our community, our faith groups ought to be perfect. We will fail each other. The disciples failed each other. Peter denied Jesus. He failed. He failed his brothers. He let Jesus down. He failed. There will be frustrations. But this is the proving ground for our faith and trust in Jesus. This is it. This is where we practice not keeping records of sins. This is where we practice patience. This is where we practice love and kindness. This is where it happens. Practice. Practice means we fail. We get to try again. Okay? It doesn't have to be perfect to be healthy. The other thing is the community, the thing to remember is this community, this group of us that are learning and teaching each other to be disciples, this isn't the focus. Right? And I think we get lost on this, that the church, this community of believers, is the focus. The root of Christianity is not Christians. It's Christ. And we miss that. Muhammad Gandhi's got a quote, again, he says, I like your Christ. He actually thought a lot of Jesus' teachings. He says, I do not like your Christians. Your Christians are so unlike your Christ. That's what he said. It's very condemning, right? He's not wrong, though, often. Too often he's not wrong, right? We should not be Christ-repellent, right, in our faith. And I think at the root of that often is the fact that we make this thing that we do, this gathering together, this being together, this relationships we have with one another, we make it about just that, about the church, it's about Christ. And if we are all on this journey together of drawing closer to Christ, being his disciples, if we're doing that together with that focus, then the mistakes, the errors, those lapses that we have are understood in that context. This Sunday morning service, I think as a church we often kind of get it a little bit wrong. Because we make this this sense of community, and we boil down, unfortunately, in our culture that church and this community of believers is really about services just like this. Please, I don't take Terry's away, but I'm not trying to say, hey, we shouldn't be doing this. This is important. This is valuable. There's value in what we do here. But to be honest, this really ought to be the dietary supplement to our main course. This should just be something that's supplementing what we're getting from each other on a regular basis. All right? This gathering on Sunday mornings was never meant to be our main course. Our goal here is to have pews filled Sunday morning with worshipers rather than communities of believers. Rather with communities of believers who are being nurtured and nurturing one another throughout the week. That's what we should have. We should be coming together. Church, this is a quote from somebody else, and see who it is, but church isn't where you meet. Church isn't a building. Church is what you do. Church is who you are. Church is the human outworking of the person of Jesus Christ. Let's not go to church, but let's be the church. So what is authentic community? It's growing together. It's this family that with guiding, it's this family that guiding that's growing together, learning from each other. Brothers and sisters instructing and challenging and discipling one another. It's about serving together. And Cinnaboy probably could give courses on this. I think the Cinnaboy Church about serving together, making many hands do light work. Many hands make light work. Look at I was in here a few weeks ago. This was just all wood and cement. You came together and you make this happen. I think that's tremendous. It's about fellowshipping together. Okay? And I'm not just talking about getting together for birthday parties or Grey Cups or whatever. I'm talking about real fellowship. Real fellowship. Experiencing each other's pains, your victories, your struggles, your prayers in each other's lives. What a neat story that Justin had. I don't know if it's in here, but just talking about back there, just hearing that, talking about this community that ate together for this young man that was far from God. And as a community, there was pains there, and then as a community to get to rejoice when you hear his redemption story. That's community. There's aches and pains, and we understand them. We live them together. And this crosses over into worship. I think worship becomes much more meaningful when we do so in community. When I know, and I do know in some cases, when you're here and you know what's going on in people's lives, when you know the strains and the struggles and the pains they're experiencing, you know what they've gone through, you maybe know what they're rejoicing about, how much more special is it to see that man or woman or child raise their hands to Jesus, to call out to Jesus, to praise him despite of their circumstances, or to praise him because of their circumstances, to give thanks. When you know that's occurring, then it's not this individualistic journey anymore. It's not about ourselves. And we're doing this together. And I'll be honest with you, it gets a little ugly sometimes. We know that. We know that sometimes this stuff can get ugly. That these relationships are hard. We're broken people. And we live in a broken world. There's some really nasty things out there that we are experiencing on a daily basis. Do we always respond to those things with the perfection, with the grace that we need, or what have you? No, we fail. We fail in our own selves, we fail each other. But this is the crock pot that Jesus has said, I want you to make disciples. Right here. This is it. And there's going to be some heat. There's going to be some friction. But this is it. This is what I want you to use. This is the tool. I don't think it makes sense. I don't think it makes sense that he picked two fishermen to say, go and spread my yoke. Go spread my word. It doesn't make sense, so many of the things that Jesus did, but this is what he chose. This is how he made us. The other thing is with the community, about service, about teaching one another, it is about discipling and being discipled. And so we need to be authentic. We need to say, hey, my journey's not done. I can learn from you. You can learn from me. We continue on this together. This is where it happens. And this is where we know, this is where the test is. This is where we know that the fruits come. We know it's real. When I can be patient in situations with people that really test my patience. This is where it happens. This is why we love camp. It's a part of it. Real discipleship happens. We put people in small spaces for extended periods of time, and it's like a social experiment a little bit. But it really happens. Even for Carrie and I, our faith gets tested, our patience gets tested. All of those things. Our endurance, our love gets tested. Not just for each other, but for the ministry and for the people that we're doing this for, it gets tested. There's real discipleship happening. And it's happening in that. And I encourage you. I sense that this is strong here in Assiniboine, in this community. I encourage you to go deeper in it. I encourage you to be in a relationship with one another. The tendency is to pull away from people because they hurt us, because they cause us some pain, because it's hard. And it is. But that's where Christ wants to shape you and mold you. That's where he wants to happen. It's so rare that we just on our own are just tracking on our own, and God is just molding us and shaping us and making us disciples. It doesn't happen. It's very rare. More often than not, you see people lose faith, get off the path in those situations. And yeah, I believe that God can persevere in those situations. I believe that God can intervene in those situations, but I don't believe that's his ideal. It's with others. I really appreciate you having Carrie and I here and welcoming us again. I would encourage you to if you haven't already checked out camp, anywhere, any camp, I would encourage you to do that. Just a little sidebar, Set Free. I would encourage you as a community to do Set Free together. We've done it in Moose Jaw and Hillcrest, and it's a powerful tool that you begin to that journey together of being set free from some pretty deep baggage or sin, or maybe some not so deep stuff, but some sin and things that are holding you back, and you do so in community. It's a wonderful event, and I highlight one of the highlights of my past couple of years, and I'd encourage you to do that. But it's just another way that we can do community together and continue this road to becoming better disciples. Kelly, I think there you are. Thank you. Thank you so much for having us, and turn over to Kelly.